All right, so let's continue where we left off. And the plan is I want to focus a lot on planning for the project, because I believe that if you can look at what goes into putting a plan together, then you will know what it takes for you to manage that plan to delivery. All right. But it also includes knowing initially what is required of the project, and we will use a move as an example. All right. So before we start with the initiation process, let me explain the knowledge areas that we have in project management. We have 10 knowledge areas, and these are coming from the project management body of knowledge, which is the standard that we use. And it includes the following 10 areas. I'm going to leave the first one out for now and just talk about the others. Um, well, I'll start with this one. Integration takes you from beginning to end of a project. It's how a PM integrates all aspects of a project. And one of the beginning part of integration is the charter, the project charter, which is usually the first document that we use to get a project started. So whenever you're being assigned a project, it is that charter that should be filled out, and we will go through an example of a charter here, but not right this second, but once we get started with the initiation steps. So the integration includes the charter, includes things like change management. You start to develop your plan there, but the planning requires that we do all of the other areas that you see here. So we will be defining the scope of our project, like the requirements, what do we need to deliver on our project. And so that's where they come from, the requirements, the scope, the WBS, if you know what it is, the work breakdown structure. Then we look at the activities and how they're connected to make a project schedule, which I'm hoping we will learn. So I really want to focus on you guys understanding, how requirements are collected. I want you to understand how to finalize the scope. I want you to learn how to develop the schedule. And then I also want you to learn how to figure out the budget, but we're not like gonna go crazy on that part, because most PMs will not be tasked with costing, but if you want to, we can look at that briefly. But my main goal is that you understand what the project is about in the charter, develop the, get the requirements, the scope, the work breakdown structure, the schedule, put some resources on it. So that's the resource management on the right over here. Figure out the quality requirements or standards that we need to comply with. That's what each knowledge area is. It's an area of knowledge for a PM to be good at. And also we need to plan out the communications that would happen within and outside the project. What information needs to be shared, from whom to whom, and what constitutes a communication plan. Then we are going to look at the tendering process. I don't know that we can cover every single item. Typically, I don't try to cover everything. I try to cover the basics. And the basics to me over here, the main things that I really care about are the things that you see here. Okay? If I can get you through this successfully, and then look at how to develop a communication plan, how to work with your stakeholders, how to analyze your risks. These are the core, because you're not always responsible for cost. And the quality standards here that need to be implemented tend to be part of your scope anyways. They're part of the requirements that you have to satisfy. For example, in construction, they have to satisfy health and safety. It's not really an option for them. And health and safety could be part of quality. But it is within the scope of the work. So I will explain to you how quality and scope are related, and how implementing quality reduces the level of risk in the project. But the ones that I highlighted here are really the most important ones for you to know. Change, the charter, change management, requirements, scope, the schedule, communications, risk, and stakeholder management. If you know these well, you'll manage your projects well. And since we're not looking for certification training, I'm going to put less priority on procurement and maybe less priority on cost. Like in PMP, they do earned value. I don't think I'll be covering that for you. It's not I'm not getting you ready for an exam. I'm getting you ready to run your own projects successfully. We'll talk a little bit about resource management, and I'll give you overall how you can put quality into your scope of the project. So we will cover all the important areas, and I want to make sure we learn it nicely. So these are the knowledge areas, and all of these knowledge areas, they fall under specific process groups. Meaning, let me actually move one more slide. See it on the left here, on the left-hand side, you will see all of the knowledge areas. So we have integration, scope, schedule, cost, quality, resource, communication, risk, procurement, stakeholder. These are all the knowledge areas. And then on the top side of this, we have the process groups, initiating all the way to closing. So we have initiating, planning, executing, monitor, control, and closing. The initiating process group here, you'll see this is the one that starts the project going. This is where a charter is initiated. This is where your change management plan is developed. This is where you start creating your project management plan. But you will not finish it here. But you will also identify your key stakeholders. Mainly, knowing your charter, knowing your stakeholders, are part of that initiation process. You could do your kickoff meeting here. These are the things you do to get a project going. And then the planning process groups includes all of the planning activities that you have to do, including the scope, the schedule, the budget, quality. It covers all of the knowledge areas and all of the respective plans that are in it. Executing process group, this is the way I'm going to cover executing is I'm going to bundle it with monitor and control, and I want to call that implementation. See, I will start my project here, I will plan it here, and then I'll implement it here, and then I'll close it here. So as part of implementation, we will execute all of the plans, make sure they happen, track the statuses, the schedule, the budget, see if we're meeting all of the timelines as expected, if we're meeting the scope of the work, and then if anything needs to be fixed, we fix it here by keeping an eye, which is monitoring, and then controlling things by change. And then closing process is all the things that we have to do at the very end of a project. So we're going to go through all of these, and if I show you here, these are not all going to be covered like piece by piece, but majority will be covered. So for example, in initiation, we will do the charter. You see, there's nothing in the other knowledge areas, but we will develop the project charter, which gets the project started. There's nothing here. And we'll also identify and analyze our stakeholders. So we will do all the initiation activities as part of the course. We will start our plan. We will do the collect requirements, define scope, WBS. We'll do the schedule, which is all of these to develop the schedule. I will show you how we do that. We'll develop the schedule. I'll show you how a budget or cost for a project is developed, but we will not spend too much time on it. And then we'll show you how to plan for quality and to make sure it's implemented in your project. And then planning that happens pertaining to resources, I'll also talk about it. And then I'll cover this fully nicely, how to develop a communication plan, because that's really essential. And then I'll show you nicely how to manage risk. But first, how to analyze the risks. And then I will briefly talk about procurement and how to plan for tendering if it's required. And as part of the identified stakeholders here, we may also develop a stakeholder engagement approach, like how do we want to work with our stakeholders. So a lot of them are going to be covered. I think majority will be covered, but from a practical side. So we're not really looking at inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs. We're just looking at how do you actually cover that one step, right? So that's our goal, is to cover these 10 knowledge areas across all of these process groups. They're called process groups, by the way, because they are, they represent what all of the processes here are. So for example, initiating process group includes all of the initiating processes, planning process groups, all of the planning processes, and so on. You'll find that the majority sit inside planning. So if you look here, every knowledge area on the left has something in planning, but not every one of them would have something in initiation or in execution. So monitor control also is another one that has something for every one of these knowledge areas that you see here. In case you're hearing knowledge area as just a phrase, a knowledge area is an area of knowledge. for a PM. You would need to know how to manage scope or schedule or budgets or quality and so on. Each has processes associated with it that would be either initiation or planning or execution or monitor control or closing. So it's like X and Y axis for the process. Plan quality management is under the quality knowledge area, but it's a planning activity or planning process. Manage quality, or let's pick this, acquire resources, is part of resource management knowledge area, and it's in the executing group because acquiring resources is an execution activity. It's something you do. This is how you start, plan, do, check on yourself, control it if you have to, and then close it out. All right, there's something I need to mention before we move forward here. When we start a project, we start it only one time. So a project's only started once. So let's consider that a milestone, a significant point where a project is started. And then once it's started, you can start with your planning activities. All right, your planning activities will continue throughout, because even when you develop a plan right now, you may have to modify. I could develop a schedule, but I may have to modify the schedule later on for whatever reason, right? So I will start the planning here. And let me just put a label on it. Over here is initiate, and over here is planning. So planning will start the moment we have any information. If you give me a project charter and you tell me you want to move us out of the offices and we're like 100 people or 200 people, I can start to identify people who should be involved, talk to them, and start to get some ideas. But I could also know from you that this is your timeline for getting the move done. When do you want it done? How much money you're willing to spend? That's the beginning of planning, all right? And then once I start planning, the next thing I need to do is, the moment I do anything, I need to, the moment I have enough to go with, I need to start my execution. So if I have, remember I talked about progressive elaboration, it means that we can plan the details later also. So if I have enough planned, I should be able to start some of the execution for the things that I know for sure we have to do, so I can start executing on that work, actually doing the work, right? So execution, let me just write the word execute here. Execution. So we'll start the execution process then, and once I start executing, immediately I will start to monitor the results of what I did. So I had a plan of some things that need to happen. I started executing on the work, and once I start executing, I'm going to monitor the results of what I executed, because I need to make sure, so monitoring starts here. I need to make sure that what I'm executing matches what I thought I was going to have. So my plan was there, I executed, I am monitoring to make sure that the results of what I'm executing match the original plan. If they do, that's fine. At that point, I can bring them down to closing. So I'm going to draw one more arrow. When I monitor, if all goes well, I'm going to take some of these things into the closing process, meaning I can start to slowly close pieces of my project. Closing of a project doesn't happen in one shot. It happens in stages. As every deliverable or small piece of your project is completed, you start to close small pieces of that one project. So let's assume I completed the packing part. So I can say that part of it is done. Then we did the physical move, that's done. Then we did the unpacking, then that's done. Then we check all the networks, or we connected all devices. You can see it starts to close piece by piece over here. All right. Now, what happens if you're monitoring and checking on your work, and then you realize that, the results don't match, like you are not finishing as fast as you wanted to? Then what you need to do is you need to control the situation. So some things that are going well will go into closing, but when they are not going well, they're going to go into the control process. And in the control process, we are mainly involved in making necessary changes. We control the project through change. Okay, so controlling by taking some corrective or preventive action. And that controlling process is going to result in you making changes to your original plan. So some things in your plan would have to be changed due to you trying to fix things that have gone wrong. And all the things that you changed in your plan will then have to be executed. So it's going to trickle back down here, and what you execute, you need to monitor. And if it goes well, you can take it to closing. You can close the second part. Otherwise, you have to monitor again through change. So a lot of what we control, right, we control through change management. Okay, and if you're not making any changes and you're just keeping the bad performance, then definitely you will fail by the end of the project. So I hope you understand here that once you start the project after initiation, it is like a cycle that just keeps going on and on. From the moment you start planning, you will start to execute, monitor and control, fix things, change your plan, execute, monitor, control, all the way till all the pieces are completed in your project. It does require that the PM is on top of things, aware of what to expect. Otherwise, what are you monitoring? You have to have some plan, some expectation, some timeline, some, I don't know, some deliverable for you to feel that, yes, I am on track, or no, we are falling behind, something like that. Without a proper plan, there's nothing for you to monitor. That's why you're going to find that I will focus a lot on how we plan, a lot more than how do you follow up. We will cover how to follow up, but not so much as how you plan, because if you don't know how to plan, or if you don't have the proper requirements, or if you don't even know the objectives of the project, all of your planning could be faulty. All right, and whatever you monitor, you're monitoring a faulty plan, so it's pointless. All right, so I need to make sure you know how to plan. All right, so moving forward, a project has a life cycle, and it goes from initiation to planning to execution or implementation, which I call execution, monitoring, control, and then it goes out into the closing process. The way we're going to do it is we're going to start with initiation, and our project's going to be a move, and I'm going to show you how we go through all the steps